shadows behind sacred walls. The morning sun cast long shadows across St. Peter's Square as Cardinal Alessandro Toretti made his way through the labyrinthine corridors of the Apostolic Palace. His footsteps echoed against ancient marble, each step carrying him deeper into a world where faith and power had intertwined for nearly 2 millennia. The ornate frescoes that adorned the walls seemed to watch him with knowing eyes, silent witnesses to centuries of secrets that lay buried beneath the Vatican's sacred facade. In the depths of the Apostolic Archive, formerly known as the Secret Archives, Monsignor Giuseppe Benedetti ran his weathered fingers along the spine of a leather-bound tome. The archive stretched before him like an underground city of knowledge, 85 kilometers of shelves containing 12 centuries of human history, controversy, and carefully guarded truths. For most of its existence, these halls had been forbidden to outsiders, their contents known only to a select few who understood that some truths were too dangerous for the world to bear. The documents surrounding Benedetti told stories that would shake the foundations of faith itself. Suppressed Gospels lay nestled between detailed records of the Inquisition, their parchment yellow with age and heavy with implications. Financial ledgers documented transactions that had funded both saints and sinners, while correspondence between popes and emperors revealed the delicate dance of spiritual authority and earthly power that had defined the Church's role in shaping civilization. In recent decades, however, the most haunting secrets were not ancient but achingly modern. Father Michael O'Sullivan had once been a trusted shepherd to his flock in a small Irish parish. Behind his gentle smile and warm Sunday sermons lay a darkness that would eventually consume not just him, but the entire institutional structure that had protected him. When the first allegations surfaced, they were met not with justice but with a quiet transfer to another parish, then another and another. The pattern repeated itself across continents, creating a web of complicity that reached the highest echelons of church hierarchy. Bishop Thomas Mercier sat in his office overlooking the Roman skyline, a stack of personnel files spread across his mahogany desk. Each folder contained the story of a priest who had betrayed the most sacred trust, that between pastor and child. Yet instead of swift action, these files had become instruments of institutional preservation. Mercier had participated in the careful choreography of reassignment, the delicate language of recommendation letters that spoke of new opportunities and fresh starts, while omitting the true reasons for these transfers. The children, their voices, their pain, their shattered innocence, had become collateral damage in a war to protect the Church's reputation. The conspiracy of silence extended beyond individual bishops to the very heart of the Vatican itself. Cardinal Secretary of State Vincenzo Martinelli received weekly reports from dioceses around the world, each one carefully sanitized to minimize scandal while maximizing plausible deniability. The institutional memory of the Church, usually so meticulous in preserving history, became deliberately selective when it came to documenting these failures. On a rain-soaked evening in 1983, 15-year-old Emanuela Orlandi kissed her mother goodbye before heading to her flute lesson in Rome. She never returned home. Her father, Ercole Orlandi, was a faithful employee of the Vatican, a man who had devoted his life to serving the Holy See. Yet when his daughter vanished without a trace, the very institution he had served seemed to turn its back on his family's anguish. The investigation that followed became a labyrinth of dead ends and mysterious interventions. Phone calls claiming responsibility came from shadowy figures who seemed to know too much about Vatican operations. Some claimed Emanuela had been kidnapped as leverage in a plot against Pope John Paul II. Others suggested her disappearance was connected to the Vatican Bank's entanglement with organized crime. Each lead seemed to dissolve just as investigators drew close to the truth. Vatican officials, when pressed by Italian authorities, offered carefully worded statements of concern while providing minimal cooperation. Archives that might have contained relevant information remained sealed, protected by the same institutional secrecy that had preserved church mysteries for centuries. The Orlandi family's desperate search for answers became a public symbol of the Vatican's opacity. Their daughters face a haunting reminder that some secrets came at the cost of human suffering. In the financial corridors of the Institute for the Works of Religion, the Vatican Bank, another type of darkness flourished. Roberto Calvi, known as God's banker, had built an empire of shell companies and offshore accounts that stretched from the Swiss Alps to the Caribbean islands. His partnership with the Vatican Bank had begun as a way to manage the church's growing financial portfolio, but it had evolved into something far more sinister. Late at night in his London hotel room, Calvi reviewed the coded ledgers that documented transactions flowing through the Vatican's financial networks. Billions of dollars moved through accounts linked to Propaganda Due, a secret Masonic lodge with connections to Italy's intelligence services and organized crime families. The money laundering schemes were elegant in their complexity, using the Vatican's sovereign status to create an impenetrable shield around questionable transactions. When the Banco Ambrosiano collapsed in 1982, taking billions in depositor funds with it, Calvi became a liability to powerful interests. His body was found hanging beneath Blackfriars Bridge in London, his pockets filled with cash and masonry symbols, a grotesque parody of Masonic ritual that suggested his death was anything but suicide. The Vatican Bank's connection to the scandal created shockwaves that reverberated through the Holy See's financial operations for decades. In the private study of the papal apartments, Pope Pius XII held a sealed envelope that had arrived from Fatima, Portugal. The letter, written by Sister Lucia dos Santos, contained the third secret revealed by the Virgin Mary to 3 shepherd children in 1917. The first 2 secrets had already proven prophetic, predicting the Great War and the rise and fall of Soviet atheism. But this third revelation was different, more disturbing in its implications. The secret spoke of apostasy within the church itself, of a bishop dressed in white, falling among the ruins of a half-destroyed city. It described a crisis of faith that would shake the very foundations of Christianity, with cardinals opposing cardinals and bishops confronting bishops. The language was apocalyptic, suggesting that the greatest threat to the church would come not from external enemies but from internal corruption and loss of faith. For decades, successive popes wrestled with whether to reveal this prophecy to the world. The implications were staggering. How could the church maintain its authority if it publicly acknowledged that its own future might be marked by crisis and apostasy? When the secret was finally released in 2000, the Vatican's interpretation focused on the assassination attempt against Pope John Paul II, but many believed the full truth remained hidden, too dangerous for the faithful to bear. The specter of past errors haunted the Vatican's archives as well. In a climate-controlled vault, the trial documents of Galileo Galilei remained as a testament to institutional pride. The great astronomer's persecution for supporting the heliocentric model of the solar system had become a symbol of the Church's resistance to scientific progress. For centuries, these documents remained locked away, their contents known only to a few scholars who understood how badly the Church had erred. It wasn't until 1992, nearly 4 centuries later, that Pope John Paul II officially rehabilitated Galileo, acknowledging the Church's mistake. But even this admission came grudgingly, wrapped in theological language that minimized the institutional failure while praising the eventual recognition of truth. The archives contained not just the trial records but also the internal debates, the political calculations, and the personal letters that revealed how human pride and institutional preservation had triumphed over truth. Cardinal Toretti's morning walk had brought him to the Sistine Chapel, where Michelangelo's frescoes depicted both the glory of creation and the final judgment awaiting humanity. As he stood beneath the painted heavens, he reflected on the complex legacy of the institution he served. The Vatican was not a monolith of evil, as its critics claimed, nor was it the perfect embodiment of divine will that its supporters proclaimed. It was instead profoundly human, capable of both transcendent beauty and devastating moral failure. The secrets hidden within the Vatican's walls were not typically about a single, monstrous revelation but rather about a pattern of behavior that emerged when an ancient institution chose self-preservation over truth, reputation over justice, and power over humility. These were the shadows that danced between the sacred and the profane, the darkness that existed alongside the light in humanity's ongoing struggle to understand the divine. As the cardinal made his way back through the corridors of power, past the archives filled with secrets and the offices where decisions that affected millions were made behind closed doors, he carried with him the weight of institutional memory, both the glory and the shame, the triumphs and the failures that had accumulated over 2 millennia of human religious experience. The Vatican's greatest secret, perhaps, was not any single revelation but the simple, complex truth that even the most sacred institutions were ultimately composed of fallible human beings, struggling to balance their highest aspirations with their deepest flaws. The shadows grew longer as evening approached, and somewhere in the depths of the archives, new documents were being filed away, their contents destined to join the vast repository of secrets that would continue to shape the Church's relationship with truth, power, and the faithful who looked to it for guidance in an uncertain world.
Don't forget to like, drop a comment, and subscribe. There are many more secrets waiting to be uncovered.